They say every cloud has a silver lining, and if there was any silver lining in Fidel Castro's rise to power, it would be the thousands of immigrants who've come to South Florida and helped us grow and prosper. Daisy Oliveira is here to tell us the tale of one such man now a bit down on his luck.
Well, he's very much down on his luck, but you know, it doesn't seem to have affected him that much. We all wonder sometimes what it would be like to have fame and fortune. The man you're about to meet has been there and back. And you know, throughout it all, he has remained the hero that they called the Cuban Kid, Kid Gavilan.
Now round 3 of this 15-round welterweight title bout between Johnny Bratton of Chicago, the champion, and Kid Gavilan of Cuba.
Gavilan had that magic ingredient that you look for. You find in maybe 1 out of a million fighters, like a Sugar Ray Leonard.
In all his 8 years in the ring, Gavilan has never been knocked out.
I'd have to say he's one of the greatest we ever had. You have to compare him with Carmen Basilio, Sugar Ray Leonard.
If Gavilan wins, it'll be the first time that Cuba has ever had a world boxing champion. There it is, the fight's over. The winner and new world's welterweight champion, Kid Gavilan.
How things change. Today, the Kid, world welterweight champ from 1951 to 1954, hero of millions, lives alone in a rundown Miami housing project. He doesn't complain and spends much time remembering his days of glory, the days before a string of events brought the sure-footed champion to his knees. He was born Gerardo González in the Cuban province of Camagüey 59 years ago. His grandmother worked as housekeeper for the Yanez family in the upper-class suburb of La Vigía. As a youngster, he remembers his first brush with what would be his call to glory.
When kids started school, they looked for reasons to start a fight. I had no idea what boxing was. Then I had a fight during recess with a guy that was a lot bigger than me, but I broke his nose, and that gave me more courage. One day, I listened to a Joey Louis fight when he fought this Englishman. From then on, I knew what I wanted to do.
1951, Kid Gavilan pummels Johnny Bratton into oblivion for his first welterweight championship title. Those who remember the Kid from Cuba put him in the same class, maybe even above today's golden boys of the ring.
Oh, he'd knock all these kids out.
Kid Gavilan was a tremendous attraction, very colorful fighter.
Chris Dundee, longtime boxing promoter, brought Kid Gavilan to Miami several times. In fact, the Kid trained at the famous 5th Street Gym on South Beach in 1952. Did the public like him?
The public loved him.
And he just had that special charisma. When he smiled, he lit up the ring, and that's why the people wanted to see him.
Gavilan has been installed the favorite tonight.
Chris Dundee's brother Angelo, Muhammad Ali's trainer of many years, met Kid Gavilan in New York in 1948.
Let's face it, he's the welterweight champ of the world, and he wound up fighting all the greatest fighters around. Robinson and him was like a work of art to watch, and I was an admirer of Gavilan because he was so good to look at.
With all his success came fame, adulation, and a new lifestyle. He moved his family to a 36-acre ranch in the country just outside Havana, resting and training there between jaunts to London, Monte Carlo, Paris, Nice, and Egypt. The Kid from Cuba had made it.
Back in those days, a man in Cuba that earned $1,000 was almost a millionaire. In New York, I had some fights that paid $5,000 to $10,000 and up to $100,000. It was an incredible amount of money back then.
(1959). The high-flying champ who retired from boxing a year ago at age 33 finds himself in the midst of a revolution as Castro moves his troops onto Cuba.
Well, I lost it all when Fidel Castro took over, and he began stealing everybody's land and belongings. They made up their own laws. They took my land, my ranch, 36 acres. I still live there, but I couldn't buy or sell any of my own things. They even went as far as to fence off my house from my own land to keep me off.
9 years later, in 1968, with what little he had left, the Kid finally made it to the United States. But any plans of steady employ were thwarted by the first of 3 strokes that left his right side completely useless.
I was in Tampa for a while, working in parks and recreation. Then after I had the first stroke, I couldn't work for a while. I went to Pennsylvania, and there I had 2 more strokes, the last one in 1980. But I'm a little better now.
Today, Gerardo González, still known to all as Kid Gavilan, the Cuban hawk, lives in a public housing project near Liberty City. Ironically, this man, who was once part of the royalty of the boxing world, now can't even count on this roof over his head, having faced eviction proceedings for non-payment of rent.
He's 59 years old, and therefore at this point he cannot collect Social Security. And in the meantime, he's just having a very hard time making it. Subsequently, I managed to work out an agreement with the Housing Authority, and they are going to allow him to stay. But the basic problem that he's got now is he's got no money. He doesn't make enough to support himself.
For a while, Kid Gavilan had a full-time job with City of Miami Parks as a member of the boxing staff. For $5.50 an hour, he passed his knowledge on to young boys working out at Hadley Park. But he was laid off this past September. For now, he's not bitter, but he feels fortunate to be living in this tiny, unair-conditioned efficiency. Alone, surrounded only by memories of his glory days. Aided by a few clippings and photographs he managed to smuggle out of Cuba. Like this one, of all-time boxing great Joe Louis.
I don't mind it here now, because then I was never vain about having all I had. I never looked at how much money I had, how much I was worth. I was humble. I knew that boxing was my profession. And when I cashed my check, I knew I was being paid for doing an excellent job, that's all. You can't take my glory away from me. That is mine.
The winner, a new world's welterweight champion, Kid Gavilan.
Daisy, you said he was paralyzed, but I'd hate to walk into one of those right hooks he was throwing. How's he doing now?
Well, he's got that right hook back, but for a couple of years from about 1980, he didn't. He's done a lot of, he's had a lot of work with therapy and things like that, and he does a lot of training.
What impression did he leave you with?
I was very moved by his whole attitude. He's very religious, and the way he looks at it is, if this is what God intended, that's fine. He had his glory, he had his fame, and you know, no one can take that away from him.
Thanks a lot, Daisy.